Welcome to Economics 1010. Today we're going to be talking about monopolies. We're on chapter 7. So last time we talked about perfect competition. We talked about that range as far as when you go from perfect competition, monopolistic competition, which is just little companies trying to become monopolies. You got oligopolies, duopolies, then actual real monopoly. Okay, we're going to be looking at monopolies today. And guess what? Monopolies, it's a bit different as far as how you figure out where they should produce, because for monopolies in general, even though they have control over the price, you still don't have complete control over the market, because you still have demand in and of itself, which demand is set. Okay, people have their prices they're willing to pay at certain points, and so what happens if you produce more? Well, then you're gonna have to lower your price a bit in order to get people to buy it. Okay, because in order to get more people to buy it, you're gonna have to lower your price a bit. So you have to look and say, well, are those extra units worth lowering our price a bit as far as overall profit? In order to figure that out, you're going to be looking and say, well, what's our overall gain on revenue? And what's our overall costs with that extra step? So it's going to be MR equals MC. That's the main thing you're going to see over and over in this chapter is MR equal MC. And this applies to all firms, okay? All firms. Let's go through, okay? We're going to look at the behaviors of a monopoly. Okay, monopoly is one firm, one, that produces the entire market supply of a particular good or service. Okay. Barriers to entry. Is there a lot of barrier entries? You bet. That's why it's monopoly. If there wasn't very many barriers to entry, they would not be a monopoly. Okay. A lot of times they're legally made, like utility companies. They say it doesn't make sense to have everyone with their own little water company. We're just gonna have one water company, and we're gonna regulate it. We're gonna make sure that this is the way we want it to go. And there's a lot of barriers to entries. Okay, you have market power over price and quantity, so you can decide what the price is and the quantity that's going to be provided, because you are it. You are the producer. Okay, but the thing is, even if you have control over the price and quantity, can you charge unlimited? You could, but it doesn't mean people are going to buy it. And so that's the issue. Even though you have control over price and quantity, you don't have control over demand. Okay, and so there's still going to be some issues with that. So you can't just have complete control over the market. You're just half the market. You're the supply side. Okay, the firm is the industry. The firm's demand curve is the market's demand curve. Now this is interesting, because before, when we looked at perfect competition, you didn't matter. Okay, and so whatever the equilibrium was for everybody, that became what you were now looking at as far as production. On this one, you're deciding the demand curve, okay? And your demand curve becomes the market's demand curve. And so basically, as you produce, you're changing whether or not it's worth producing, okay? Monopolists do not maximize profit where price equals marginal cost. Okay, so before, remember I told you how in perfectly competitive markets, you keep producing until price equals marginal cost. You can't do that with monopolists. Why? Because each time you produce, you are changing the price. Okay? So therefore, you have to figure out something else different. Well, if that's the case, what should I do? Well, what could you do? Well, it makes sense for perfectly competitive firms. Price equals MR because it's a price taker. Okay? The profit maximizing rule for you as monopolist is marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So we're going to look at those additional units. We're going to see how much those units, because they lower the price of everything else you're doing, are worth to you, okay, versus your marginal cost. Monopolists face a downward sloping demand curve. Marginal revenue is not constant, okay? It's not. The more you produce as a monopolist, the less price you're going to be able to charge, because you have to keep the price lower in order for more people to even want it, even though you're the only person in that market. Okay. It's sort of just like if I owned a stadium. Okay, if I own a stadium, I could make tickets cost $10,000. Doesn't mean anyone's going to buy a ticket though. But if I make the tickets available to people, I then have to start decreasing prices, and I look at see how they offset as far as the amount versus the price that it goes down. Okay. Don't worry, if you're confused right now, we're going to get to the graph, so it'll start making more sense, okay? Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue from a unit increase in quantity, okay? Monopolist can sell additional output only if it reduces prices. This is the main takeaway you got to get, okay? Monopolist, if he wants to sell more, demand's kind of set where it's at. So if I want to sell more, I literally have to reduce my prices so that those things get sold, or else they go unsold. Okay, and then I have a surplus. Okay, marginal revenue is always less than price for a monopolist. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, we're showing us marginal revenue. Price equals 13, 13, 13, 13. Okay. As we go from step to step, from A to B to C to D to E to F to G, what do you see is happening with marginal revenue? You have it go from 11, 9, 7, 5 to 3 to 1. Okay. The marginal revenue is always less than price for a monopolist. Okay. Always will be. The MR curve is always below the demand curve. Okay. The demand curve, that's the market demand. Okay. Your marginal revenue is going to be offset from that below it, okay? Because every time you produce, as far as marginal revenue goes, you're forcing the price downward, okay? So if you're forcing the price downward, that marginal revenue therefore has to be lower, because every time you produce more, price has to go down before marginal revenue. Okay, monopolist maximizes profits by producing a rate of output where MR equals MC. This is the holy grail of it. MR equals MC. Okay? We just want to know, when we take that extra step, is that additional cost? Okay? Is that more or equal to or less than MR? And that's going to let us know whether or not we should be producing. Hopefully, if we're producing more, MR is greater than MC. Okay, monopolist identifies the price corresponding to this output using the demand curve. Okay, the demand curve indicates the highest price consumers are willing to pay for a specific quantity of output. So on that demand curve, we can see at each price level, the quantity demanded, we can see what they're willing to pay at each level. Okay, let's take a look at this. Rule number 1, output setting by MR equals MC. This is always going to get you the maximum, because you're going to keep doing it until it no longer is profitable to you. Pricing using the demand curve. Okay, so all you do is you find out what your marginal cost is. You have that curve computed, and then marginal revenue, and your marginal revenue is going to be on that. Wherever those connect, if you're a monopolist, that's where you want to produce. So MR equals MC. So if I had a question, I showed you this. Okay, marginal cost is this line, marginal revenue is this line. Where do you produce? D. As monopolist, you're going to make more money, profit, producing at D. Okay? MR equals MC. Average total cost is over there. Okay? The demand is there. Okay? So if I'm producing the 4 units, okay, and the demand basically becomes the price, okay, that's what people are willing to pay for. They're willing to pay, it looks like $11 at 4. Okay. My total profit is going to be that demand, or that price that people are willing to pay in that monopoly, all the way down to where the ATC is there. Okay. That's going to give me total profit per unit. So from D to average total cost, which is that purple line there, okay, that little shaded box, that's my total profit. Okay. And so it looks like here they have it running in from 10 to 8, so that's going to be $2 per. And there's 4 units, so that's going to be $8 total. Okay, profit equals price minus ATC. So the price is where? Price is at 10, it looks like. Okay. Moving on. MR equals MC. Applies to all firms. So this one applies to all firms. So when I talked about the P equals, or price equals MC as far as the perfect competition way back, MR equals MC applies to everybody. So even them, it's the same thing, okay? A monopoly firm produces an output where MC equals MR, okay? That's where they produce that. In other words, we only produce as we're going to make more money. That's all it means there. Produce if we're going to make more money overall. A perfectly competitive firm produces an output where MC equals MR, and it equals P. Okay. All right, so in general, monopolists produce less output and charge higher prices than a competitive industry. This is probably the main theory you need to glean from this chapter. Because when I produce, it changes prices. I just want to produce what makes me the most net profit. I don't want to produce what's actually needed by demand as far as what people want. I just produce what's going to make me the most money overall net. Okay? Let's take a look at this. Monopolists is going to produce at MC equals MR. They're going to produce at that D level. Okay? Monopolist price of $10, output of 4. That is what a monopoly, if this is a monopolistic market, that's what we're producing. Okay? E, however, is MC equals P. What would E represent? Well, if we were in a perfectly competitive industry, guess what happens? That's where people would end up producing, because they're going to produce all the way to where demand equals their marginal costs. Okay? In other words, in this monopolistic industry, prices are $10 and they're only going to produce 4. So if you look at right there on the right there, monopolist price. If we were all of a sudden switch this industry to being a competitive industry, okay, it became competitive just with a blink of an eye somehow, all of a sudden prices would go down to $9 and there'd be an output of 5. There'd be more production. Okay? So for you as a consumer, what do you want in an industry? Well, if it lowers prices and there's more available, you're gonna want it competitive. However, if you're the business, what do you want to do? You want to be as monopolistic as possible so that you can just focus on net profit. Okay? If we look over here, let me go back real quick. Okay? If we look over here, if we see the average total cost, okay, it goes from a competitive profits, okay, it goes from E to the bottom of the ATC, so you just go from E down. They're making $1 per, so they're making $5 in a competitive market, all the suppliers together. In the monopolistic market, though, it's costing them from 10 to 8. Okay, I mean not costing them, but it's costing them 8, and they're making 10. So they're getting $2 per at 4. So they're going to produce less and make more. They're making $8 for their entire market. A competitive market's only making $5, even though they're doing more work. Okay. Monopolists earn positive profits due to complete barriers to entry. That's right. If you're able to keep people out, because you got this place where you're making all these economic profits, where you're making more than normal profit, then with these barriers to entry, you're going to earn a lot more than what would happen if it was actually competitive. Okay. Barriers to entries or obstacles making it difficult or impossible for firms to enter the market. So let's go over what things keep people out. Okay, think about that as we move ahead. What things keep people out? Positive profit requires the restriction of output through limiting the number of firms in the industry. So anytime you're able to limit the amount of people coming in, that's going to be more money for those that are already in the industry. Okay, and that's how you get positive profit, is by being able to restrict supply. And if you're the only person in there, then you can completely restrict supply to where it makes you the most money. Okay? They're not going to completely cut off supply, obviously. They're just going to do it to where it maximizes profit. Several barriers exist in many industries. Patents is a big example for example, medical. Okay? If you have a patent on a drug, it takes a while for it to become generic because the patent has to run out. During that time, you're going to charge whatever you think makes the most money. Okay? There's been a lot of lawsuits lately with this, such as with EpiPens and things like that. And they have exclusive rights, and there's no one else who can do it because it's a patent. It has nothing to do with the ability to make it. It has to do with claimed ownership of it. Okay. Legal harassment. You guys ever seen the big guys just completely destroy a little guy coming in? That's happened with the car industry before. Okay. If you ever watched the movie Tucker, they just go ahead and they see someone who's a threat. They're like, this person might be very innovative. Going to cost us a lot of money if we have to innovate ourselves. We don't want to deal with this person. We're just going to use legal harassment because we have more money and more lawyers, and we're just going to destroy them. Okay. Exclusive license, contract restricting factors of production. If I have a specific product and it requires certain licensing to make, and I'm the only one who holds that license, well then yeah, then no one else is going to be able to make that stuff. So it just restricts people as far as where they can get in there and what they can do. Bundling products, selling complementary products. This is really interesting. Like, for example, Comcast. What do they want to sell? They want to sell you phone, TV, cable, internet, you name it. And when the reason why it works out so well for them is because it's a one person coming in and installing all of it in your house. And once you have one company and you're got multiple things you're dealing with that one company, you don't want to get rid of them per se, because if you get rid of them, what happens? You then have to find a new provider for all those services. Okay? And so the more connected you are to a company because they're bundling products and you're getting more products from just one company, the more control that company has over you. Okay? Government franchise. The government just literally says, you are the utility. Okay? We're going to regulate you, but you're it. You get the right to produce. Monopoly's market power allows it to change the way the market responds to consumer demands. Okay? Yeah, it's true. You can respond how you wish. Okay? Number one, you're going to try and keep new firms from coming in. Why? Because it lets you keep the price high where you're making more money. Okay? A perfectly competitive firm cannot prohibit entry of new firms. Price tends to fall. So whenever you see a competitive area, so for example, agriculture, they're going to produce a lot, and the prices are going to be low. And the only way they make money is by cutting costs. Monopolists, on the other hand, they invest a lot of money into making sure new people don't get into their industries, and they want to keep people out, because as long as people stay out of their industry, they can change the prices to where MR equals MC and just kind of restrict production, basically, because they are the production and they're going to produce where it makes them the most money overall. High price and profit signal consumers' demand for more output. Okay, this is a cycle that you'll see in all industries. Okay, high profit attracts new suppliers. If there's a lot of money to be made, people start figuring out how to get into that industry. Production and supply expand because people came into the industry. They're going to start making stuff. Prices quickly fall. Okay. Economic profit gets squeezed to zero. Pressure to innovate and keep ahead. So now with the economic profit being zero, the only way you're making money at this point, because you already came in there and got money for just coming into the industry while it was still economically viable and making a lot of extra profit. Once it gets squeezed to zero, it's only if you have innovation are you making more money. Okay? And this is in a competitive industry. This is how a competitive industry works. And so they're constantly innovating because that's the only way to make money, because economic profit's been squeezed, and therefore, unless you come up with some breakthrough, somehow you're not going to make more. Monopolies are different. Okay? Monopolies have something different happen to them. They have barriers entry to prohibit competition. That's the first thing they do in their industry. We're here, put a wall around it. Okay, it's kind of like when you in colonialism, when you go and you claim land, you're like, this is our land, this is ours now. Okay, and then production and supply is constrained. You maintain that land, you maintain your hold on whatever it is as far as products, licensing, government franchise, whatever it is, you maintain that, and you maintain it so that you can then reduce supply to where it's most efficient for you to make the most money possible. Okay, you're not going to restrict it completely, you're just constraining it. Okay, and what this does, it allows the price to remain high. Prices will remain high in there compared to a competitive market. Okay, economic profit remains because you're able to hold off all these people. Guess what that means? You're continuing to have economic profit. You have it there. And this is where things change. If you already have the economic profit and your job is just to keep other people out of your industry, guess what? There's no pressure to innovate. You have more resources than the other firms in the competitive area, because in the competitive area, there's a lot more firms and it's a lot harder to innovate because you don't have the resources. In a monopoly, you have the resources to innovate. There's just not that much incentive to innovate because you've already kept other people out. Isn't that ironic? Think about that, for example. Monopolies have the most resources available to them, yet what are they going to do as a monopoly? Not much, because they don't need to. They have the most resources, but they have the least incentive to innovate. Their main incentive is keep people out. That's it. All right. But hopefully, and this is the thing that's interesting though, the only time you'll see monopolies really innovate is if they feel that if they don't innovate, government or other people will make it so other people can get into that industry. They'll say, hey, this industry is doing terrible. We need other people to come into this industry because they're not innovating. And so only when it affects their ability to keep people out, that their barriers to entry, then they'll innovate. That's about it. Okay. Market power is not solely concentrated with monopolists. And the only other reason they'd innovate too is if it was like cost saving. Okay. I'll go back to that. If the innovation leads to overall higher net profits, they will also always do those. Okay? Market power is not solely concentrated with monopolists. Okay. Two or more firms may rig the market to replicate a monopoly outcomes and profits. So, for example, it's called playground economics. Everybody play nice. We have a ball. I bounce it, you bounce it. Just keep the ball here and don't let anyone else into our market. And let's play nice with each other. And we will act like a monopoly, even though we're separate companies. Okay. Three significant industry structures provide firms with some market power. Okay. Duopolies. So duopolies are two firms that dominate, and these two firms together set the price and output, even if other firms are present. So, example, soda, again, going back to soda, Coke, Pepsi, they're the main ones. You got a lot of other people there, but Coke and Pepsi are the main ones. They basically set the prices and output for the most part. Other people do things, okay? I think it's interesting. They say, may engage in price wars, may engage in price fixing, okay? May. They're not going to do it very often. They do it. They're both like launching nukes at each other, okay? And if you have two political parties and countries and they start launching, one country launches a nuke, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to get nuked back. And because of this reasoning, you don't launch the first nuke, okay? That's what a price war is, especially in a duopoly. There's no sense to do it. It rarely happens. May engage in price fixing. Happens a lot. They signal to each other. They can't say anything, but they'll say, hey, we're going to raise ours by a nickel. Oh, you raised yours by a nickel. Okay, we're in agreement then. Okay? They want to compete on brand. They don't want to compete on price. Oligopoly. Several firms dominate the market. Okay, goods are close substitutes. May collude to control price or output. So like cell phone companies, okay. May engage in price wars. So, I mean, there's more likelihood of a price war here because there's more players involved. But even then, people don't want to do it. They don't want to start this chain reaction, okay. Rely on clever advertising to persuade customers of a product. There's the key point. They hit it on the nail. That's what people are going to do. Okay. If you look at cell phone companies, they're pretty close in price most of the time as far as services and what they actually give you. However, it's branding. It's Verizon versus T-Mobile versus AT&T, and they try and look at other things like, oh yeah, look, ours allows you to use the iPhone. Ours allows you to do this. Look for little differentiations between the products to try and get you to come to theirs. They don't want a price war on any large scale. There might be minor price skirmishes, not much. And barriers to entry are high. They don't want other people in there. Okay, monopolistic competition. Many firms selling a differentiated product. So the products are different. I can tell them apart. There's branding. Okay, no one firm has complete market power. You contend with competing brands. Each monopoly has power. You basically have power over your brand. And there's a few barriers to entry. There's not much, but there's a few. So it takes some capital, some resources. There might be some licensing. You can't just jump into it like that, but you can get into it. In terms of the market power, alter the output of goods and services in specific ways. Okay, once a firm has market power, overall, when things kind of go towards that sector, when you go from monopolistic, oligopoly to duopoly to monopoly, overall less is produced because there's not the incentive to produce more. You're not in a perfectly competitive market. Perfectly competitive markets will produce to the max of where price equals MC. Okay. Sold at higher prices. Okay. If I have a differentiated product, I can sell at a higher price. If I am the only product, I will definitely sell at a higher price because I have complete control over it and will do what I need. Okay. The result is fewer workers are needed and fewer customers purchase the products. Producers make more profit. So overall, market power is good for the business that has the power. For workers and for the actual sector, there's going to be less product produced. There's going to be fewer workers needed because they're not going to be using those workers to produce more product. Okay? But the producer overall does what? Makes more money. That's why they want market power. In principle, monopolies have a greater ability to pursue research and development. So this is going back to that thing I was telling you about. If I'm the only company there, I can combine all the resources together, and I have a lot of power to really go after development and really make things great. I have profits to invest in inexpensive R&D, but I don't have the incentive to actually improve the products unless those improved products will result in more net money overall. Okay? Continue to make profits by maintaining market power. That's what usually happens with monopolies. They focus on maintaining market power. In principle, monopolies potentially drive entrepreneurial activities because people want to overthrow the monopolies. They want to get in there. However, positive profit by innovation is not exclusive to monopoly industry. Innovators in perfect competition have the ability to earn large profits. One firm producing all output may benefit a consumer if lower costs are achieved at higher output rates. Yeah, just goes back to what we went over before. Okay, one firm producing all the output may benefit consumers if lower costs are achieved at higher output rates. Okay. In other words, economies of scale are present if average costs fall as the size, scale of plant and equipment increases. Okay, so you're going to look at the economy of scale. You're going to see what makes the most sense for you. A firm could use its size to achieve greater efficiency. If you're a large firm, you can start producing mega factories. Tesla's doing that right now, and they're looking at producing those batteries and getting them out there. Okay. Now let's go into some more vocabulary. Natural monopoly is an industry in which one firm can achieve economies of scale over the entire range of market supply. So a natural monopoly is where it makes sense to have one person do it because it's going to be better for the market. That's why it happens naturally. Okay. If something happens naturally, it means it's better for us in general. So for example, utilities, we consider those natural monopolies because we want them. They make more sense to have one company in charge. You don't want 10 power companies in your area with wires going everywhere and everyone digging up everything. Like, no, we're just going to have one power company. It's going to have the resources. It's going to do what it's going to do. We're going to regulate them, but it makes sense to have one company do it in this area. Same can be said for water and other things. They're going to say this. It makes sense to have one company over it rather than multiple companies in this area. Then we consider it natural. Okay. Large monopolists may not achieve greater efficiency. Okay. This is one thing they're stating. They're not going to necessarily be efficient as much as possible because you're now monopoly. Consumers may not benefit if the monopolist doesn't lower prices. Okay, so this is why with a natural monopoly, it's important to have them heavily regulated. Heavily in that they have power, not so much that you're restricting them, but that you have power to step in when needed. Okay, because if you have a monopoly that has control and you don't have the ability to regulate the pricing on them, and you're like, hey, you guys are making absorbent profits. We're looking at what this should be costing. We're looking at normal profits. We're looking at economic profit. And you're just way over all these profits that we're looking at. You need to bring it down. Okay? A monopolist earning large profits entices potential rivals to enter the market. Okay? A contestable market is an imperfectly competitive industry subject to potential entry if prices or profits increase. Okay? In other words, people look at markets and find out, hey, that market's looking good. Prices are going up. There's a lot of money to be made there. Maybe it's worth trying to enter. Okay. Market, as far as how contestable it is based on barriers of entry versus the reward of going in. So you're going to look at the reward of going into it versus how hard is it to go into it. And that, when you have both these things together, you start figuring out if people are going to actually go into the market. Okay. If there's a high reward and the barriers of entry are somewhat low, people are going to go into it. If there's a low reward and high barriers of entry, not very many people are going to go into it. If they're both equal, a few might go into it. Okay. If potential rivals force a monopolist to behave like a competitive firm, then a monopoly imposes no cost on the consumer. So that cost on consumers is when competition forces them to say, hey, if we abuse this too much, other people will move in. Then they start performing more like regular businesses as far as not restricting that supply and letting the prices go down. Okay? Because they're fearing that then when other people see how much value they have in that area, they're going to come in. It's sort of like the idea of not having blood in the water if there's piranhas nearby, okay, or sharks. You don't want people to think there's something reasonable to go in there, okay? So potential rivals must have a reasonable chance to enter the market and reduce the monopoly's market power. So if you have people that are able to come in, and at any point they think it's economically viable because of what's going on in that market, then the monopolies tend to behave more normal because they're like, well, if we do go this crazy route, other people are going to jump in on us, okay? Market structure explains why it can be cheap to fly to one place and expensive to fly somewhere else of equal distance. Yes, this is correct. This is why your airlines prices are always scawampus. They're crazy. Okay? Collectively, airlines are competitive. You have lots of airlines doing lots of routes. Okay? So you think, oh, prices will be okay. The problem, though, is air routes between cities are limited. Okay? So on certain routes, there might only be one person flying it. So when there's a competitive route and multiple people on that route, let's say it's from like Salt Lake City to Florida, okay? Let's say there's multiple people doing it, all right? The price might be competitive. There'll be lots of production there, and the price will be competitive. However, if there's a route that's rare and there's only one carrier on it, well, you're going to be going to monopoly pricing on that route, and the price will jump super high. So even though everything else they price might be normal, that other price won't be, okay? Each route becomes its own separate market and has different market power applied to it. So that's what they're talking about. Must analyze each route separately and understand the market power. Airline price routes differently depending on how many airlines fly the route. If several airlines fly the route, they behave competitively. One or two fly the route, they behave like monopolists and duopolies. So even if there's a second person, people start price signaling to each other like, hey, it's only me and you on this route. Let's charge $900. Let's not get in a price war over this route. Okay, let's keep it high. 1 in 10 domestic routes is monopolized. So if you ever look at routes online, and you'll see these things where they're fairly normal prices and all of a sudden a super high price, that's because that route is no longer competitive. Okay. Airports dominated by 1 or 2 carriers have higher fares. Okay, so it's not only the route. You could just have market power on the specific airport. Say, hey, there's only 1 or 2 carriers who come out of this airport. Okay. Fares from airports with 1 or 2 carriers are 45 to 85% higher than at more competitive airports. So not only do you have market power over routes, you have the airport in general. Any airport where they just have 1 or 2 carriers, all the fares that involve that airport then go up. Okay. Fare change significantly when competitors enter or exit the market. Okay. Entry and exit can be used to assess market structure and prices. Monopolies may use a sharp temporary price reduction to drive out competitors or discourage entry called predatory pricing. This is very interesting, okay? If I see someone coming into my market and they're like, hey, look, there's this market, they're making a lot of money, and so they come in here thinking they're going to make a lot of money. The problem is, do they have backing or support? And if I'm a big, giant monopoly and I got coffers upon coffers of money in the back, and I'm like, how much money will it take to put these guys in the hole? All right, well, these people we're going to fight with until they die, basically. We're going to go in. We're going to punish these people for coming into our area. And then consumers will love it. They'll build brand loyalty with us or whatever. And then once they're gone, we're going to go back to high prices. All right. A good example of this would be like Borders and Barnes & Noble, okay? I remember when Barnes & Noble and Borders were together in my city. It was great. Prices were low. One place was busy or didn't have a book. I'd go somewhere else. I'd go Borders. Okay? They got into a price war. What happened to Borders bookstore? They disappeared. What bookstore is left that's still a national chain, basically? You got Barnes & Noble. Their prices went up a lot. Okay? And so, but during that time, though, they were fighting and having predatory pricing. You'll see this most often happen with a new entrant. If I'm a monopoly and a new entrant comes in, then I'll do predatory pricing to run them out because I know they can only survive for so long. Okay? And once I've destroyed them, then I go back to my old pricing habits. Remember, it's temporary price reduction. Large carriers maintain monopoly routes by owning landing rights and gates. Those act as barriers to entry. So if you have licensing, this is an example in the airline industry. New carriers are unable to enter. That's all you have to do is just make it so no one can come in. A lottery system for new slots didn't improve competition as large carriers paid substantial sums to lottery winners to sell. Okay, so what they did is said, oh, we can only have so many people running these routes, so we're going to do a lottery to spread out these routes so that then they're competitive. Well, what happened was pretty simple. People won those routes, then the big monopolies paid them off to buy those routes and then go back to monopoly pricing. Does this sound like price shelving to me, where I buy something to shelve it so I don't have to compete with it? Yes, and monopolies do it a lot. You'd be believed how many products get presented to a company and be like, hey, I have this amazing product that's going to really help people. Can you put it onto the market for me? And they'll look at you and say, no. In fact, we don't even want to compete with it. We will buy that product just to shelve it because we do not want that on the market. It can happen with airline routes, you name it. If it's cheaper to buy it out than it is to compete with it, a company will do that analysis and they will buy it out. Software gets shelved, hardware products get shelved, things get shelved all the time based on this analysis. So overall, what is a monopoly? One company that has market power over its region. Okay, has market power. It could be region based. It could be over the sector of products in general, but it has power over that sector. Okay. Explained why price exceeds marginal revenue in a monopoly, because every single time they produce, they're changing their price. Okay. Describe how a monopoly sets output and price. MR equals MC. Again, MR equals MC. As long as that next step brings me more total money than cost, I will do it. Okay. Illustrate how monopoly and competitive outcomes differ. Very simple. Monopolies will always charge you more because it makes them more money, and they will produce less than a competitive firm. They will always happen that way. List the pros and cons of monopoly structures. The only real pros is they do have the resources to innovate if they do choose to innovate, which may happen if they are afraid of people coming into their industry. Also, monopolies sometimes just make sense to have one person do it, such as utilities where they're natural monopolies. The cons, though, will always be, as I stated before, they don't have the incentives sometimes, and they're looking at pricing, whatever gets them the most pricing. They're not going to looking at producing the most needed, which would lower prices and produce output in that industry. And have more workers working, which is really good for an economy. Then we have more people that can buy stuff. All right, so that has chapter, that was chapter 7, Monopoly. Okay, remember, if you like these videos, put a like on there. Okay, it'd be nice. I'd love to do some more type of economic videos, just doing over current events and things like that. People really get onto this channel and start watching the videos, sharing them so that I can start doing current events and talking about those things. It's always great to have you guys in class. You guys are an amazing group. Yeah, but that's it for chapter 7. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Hopefully you can interact with other people. If I get on there, I'll try and answer them myself. So, all right. Take care, everybody.